followed by Honorable Maburutsi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am, for giving me an opportunity to add Chipinge East's constituents' voice to the debate in question. The constitutional amendment comes at a time when Zimbabwe, for the first time in 2 decades, is finding her economic feet. This stability follows the carefully crafted and implemented short to medium-term development programs, the transitional stabilization program that ran from 2018 to 2020, and that formed the foundation for NDS-1, which ran from the year 2021 to 2025, and eventually the NDS-2, which is running from this year, 2026 to 2030. These policies have enhanced macroeconomic credibility as the country, for the first time in more than 20 years, enjoys sustained price stability, as evidenced by a single-digit inflation rate since the year 2024. Balance of payments stability, falling broad and strict unemployment rates, and positive economic growth rates averaging 5% for the past 5 years. It is this astronomical economic growth rate and development of which we are witnesses that has pushed millions of Zimbabweans to demand that the President, His Excellency, Comrade Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, must continue his position until 2030. So it's the works that has been done, project that has been completed in record time, that has convinced the people of Zimbabwe to demand the term length to be extended to 7 years for the current and succeeding president, that the second dispensation may start and complete new projects, and the few that are still work in progress. The people of Zimbabwe are not saying anyone should stay forever. That is naturally impossible. They only want additional 2-year extension to the current term and successive 7 years terms thereafter. It was not electoral violence that pushed the millions of Zimbabweans to demand the term length extension. In fact, in 2023, we had the most peaceful election ever. In fact, it was irreversible, astronomical development trajectory that made the millions of Zimbabwe to demand the term length extension. Madam Speaker, ma'am, for the past 2 years, hitherto, the echoes became louder and louder from every corner, every ward, traditional leaders, every village, almost all churches, except a few church denominations whose missions were closely tied to our occupiers or the then colonialists during the War of Liberation. Some of these denominations have not repented of their intentions. I feel it's a high time that they must be reminded not to depart from their mission of preaching the good news of the Lord Jesus Christ and not to entangle themselves in opposition politics, which has dismally failed in Zimbabwe.
Point of order.
It is therefore not surprising to see 99.5% of more than 500,000 of those who participated.
Point of order, Honorable.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, there is an assertion that was made by Honorable Dhliwayo, which asserts that certain churches, most of them very honorable, have worked with this country even in the toughest times of the liberation struggle. Their call for justice has been called as opposition activities. I call on you to withdraw unconditionally.
Honorable, I think you got your time to debate. Allow Honorable to debate.
Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker,
you were given your own time, then you debated. Allow Honorable to debate.
The integrity of this House is at stake. Allowing that to flow would have so many repercussions. It's okay, Madam Speaker, if you are supporting such a skewed perspective. Thank you for holding that.
Honorable. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. It is therefore not surprising to see 99.5% of more than 500,000 of those who participated in the public hearing voicing their support for constitutional amendment number 3 bill. 99.5%, Madam Speaker, ma'am. A few, only less than 1%, could not fathom such an overwhelming majority could support the bill. They were still stuck on the 2023 election outcome, despite the fact that His Excellency the President, Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, had the majority vote. They expected exactly the same results. They forgot to take into account two main variables. One, time difference. Number two, the development that has taken place to date. This is 2026. The harmonized election took place in 2023. There was no trabablas then. There is one now. And some are work in progress. State-of-the-art cancer machines have not been procured then. Now they have been procured. We had no stable currency of our own then. Now we have a stable gold-backed zinc currency. Time will not allow me to mention about many other flagship infrastructure projects, such as roads, hospital rehabilitation, water and sanitation, among others, which were not completed then. Such developments naturally make the second dispensation more attractive. Madam Speaker, I went on to scientifically determine whether the number of participants at the sample size was statistically adequate, considering a finite population of about 6 million registered voters. Despite the fact that in practice only around 60% actually votes, I used the highest potential number of voters of 6 million. The reason why I defined my population as eligible voters is basically because the crux or apex of the debate in question or the constitutional amendment bill, at least in my opinion, is on presidential and parliamentary election and electoral cycle. I therefore set my aim at 6 million. I also wanted a sample size that gives us the minimum margin of error of 1% given our population size. This implies that I set a 99% confidence level of rejecting a null hypothesis. With this variable in place, I then employed the widely used Cochrane sample size formula. The answer I obtained is 5,966, which is approximately 6,000. This implies that according to the Cochrane sample size model, at least 6,000 participants or respondents were enough to determine whether eligible voters were indexing CAB 3 or not for the given confidence level and margin of error. But we went overboard to get an overwhelming 500,000 participants, with more than 99% endorsing all the clauses and a paltry less than 1% rejecting the amendment. Madam Speaker, ma'am, this is not mere statistics, but the voice of the people. They were voicing continued price stability. They were voicing their support for continued positive economic growth. They were voicing their support for continued balance of payment stability. And this, in my opinion, was a result of the captain of the ship, to be specific.
Order, Honorable. What's your point of order, Honorable?
Mubato echigaro maite henyu muno mumba mamuri pachigaro pamuri papo mutungamiro wemba ino Honorable Speaker Mdenda vakati paunonotaura nyaya dzechekuita nemanhamba mastatistics muchirungu unofanira kuita chunhu chekuti vanhu vakada unochitsvakurudza vanoita verify statistics dzemamiriyoni dziri kutaurwa nahonorable vari kudhibheta anofunga kuti tikati vauye nadzo vagokupai document inoratidza izvozvo vanogona kukupai.
Honorable order. Honorable Hamauswa. Muri kuti hamufunge hamusati maona kuti vanouya nazvo here kana kuti havauye nazvo. Saka ngatitendere Honorable Dhliwayo vaite debate ravo vapedzi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am, for your protection. They were voicing continued price stability. They were voicing their support for continued positive economic growth. They were voicing their support for continued balance of payment stability. And this, in their opinion, was a result of the captain of the ship, to be specific. They cannot imagine slipping back into the 2008 economic quagmire. And Parliament, for the people and by the people, cannot be seen opposing the voice of the people. Madam Speaker, lest we forget, it took us more than 20 years since the Black Friday of the 1997 to find a working formula, a working solution to the then years defined by currency crisis, exchange rate volatility, and price instability, economic recession, and widening balance of payment deficits. We cannot forget those years when our supermarkets were defined by empty shelves, when winding queues in shop verandas and service stations were the order of the day and night. Now, we have fully stocked the supermarkets with more than 60% of locally manufactured products. Fewer queues have disappeared. We now have a working Zimbabwe called currency. And only last week, we just landed one of the most powerful non-permanent seats of the UN Security Council. G7 countries such as Germany could not make it. This is Africa's endorsement of our diplomat-in-chief, Africa's and the world at large endorsement of our engagement and re-engagement diplomacy. The world's endorsement of our country's international image and relations is alluded to by Honorable Shamu in his point of national interest. Once again, befitting congratulations to the sons of the soil, befitting congratulations to our diplomat-in-chief and the President, His Excellency Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa Munumutapa, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Professor Mugwira and team. A job well done indeed. It is in this vein that on behalf of Chipinge East and on my own behalf, I stand supporting CAP 3. Especially clauses 4, 9, and 10, which represent the wishes of the millions of Zimbabwe that came out in their hundreds of thousands to support the extension of the term length from 5 years to 7 years, both for the President and the members of Parliament, amending sections 95, 143, and 158 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. This will allow policy consistency and accountability during the tenure of the National Development Strategy 2, and align it with the regional, continental, and global frameworks, such as the SADC Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan, which runs from 2020 to 2030, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, 2015 to 2030. They are all coming to an end by the year 2030. Any policy disruption a year or 2 years before the end of this program is most likely to trigger some adverse economic effects and accountability challenges. After 2030, the Second Republic leadership has to account for the Vision 2030 blueprint. The leadership has to account for the National Development Strategy blueprint. An additional 2 years does not mean the current president is indispensable. This can only be done if the founders of such programs drives their vision to the end. Defining a 7-year term as indispensable leadership tenure is misplaced. 7-year term does not mean absence of democracy. There is no empirical evidence that shows that less than 7 years means more democratic space. Never. Neither does a 7-year mean lack of democracy. We have many mature democracies with 7-year term, such as Italy. A 7-year term does not imply retrogressivity. And mind you, we are not here to represent the voice of scholars, but the millions of Zimbabweans who, without mincing their words, want this amendment, in effect, 2 years later. Moreover, as some debaters before me have already alluded to, such constitutional reforms are not unique to Zimbabwe, but has since been implemented by even the so-called founders of democracy. In Europe, several countries have since moved to 7-year presidential terms, including but not limited to Italy, Ireland, and Kazakhstan.
Order, Honorable Dhliwayo. May you wind up, Honorable Dhliwayo? You are left with 3 minutes.
fine. Okay, just a minute. Madam Speaker, let me come closer home to the sub-Saharan African countries, which we are part of. In the year 2008, Cameroon amended its constitution, provide for a 7-year presidential term, followed by those other countries. Guinea conducted public consultation in which about 25,000 people participated to enter its suburb. Yet in our case, more than 500,000. These millions are our bosses. They want the amendment to be done. Madam Speaker, who are we to resist the Sabbath of the Lord? After 7 years, then shall there be rest. Far be it from us, Madam Speaker, as Parliament, that we are found hindering the millions of Zimbabwe by not allowing sufficient time. A formula that has allowed the supremacy of economics over politics, the supremacy of real economic development over slogans, defined by tangible products beyond the ability to read and write. The Second Republic has rewritten the principles of political science. The benefits of frequent elections beyond those printing election materials the world over must be reconsidered. Coming to direct versus indirect vote. There are some who think the indirect vote will rob the Zimbabweans of one man, one vote. Do they imply that South Africa is denying its citizens of their right to vote? Is Botswana denying its citizens? Is USA, which uses an electoral system, denying its citizens the right to vote? Surely no. That thought is misplaced. Studies have shown that the majority of people vote on partisan basis, which is not threatened in this bill. It is actually strengthened. The Constitution Amendment Bill also seeks to reform our voting model. This enhances institutional capacity as voting will be dictated along partisan lines. Chipingeist applauded this amendment as it eliminates possibility of delays in forming government due to mere court cases. The worst case scenario is when the loser actually argues that the party does not belong to had voted for him. The bill brings such measures to an end. Moreover, it eliminates the big name mentality above the superiority of political parties. In political parties' constitution, the attempt is to try and make the political parties supreme over individuals. But this has not been the case, especially in opposition parties in Zimbabwe. The big name mentality has weakened opposition politics as noble ideas are ignored in favor of the so-called big names in opposition circles. It also eliminates the possibility of populating or littering the voters' roll with presidential candidates with no one to vote for them except themselves. This lowers printing costs and enhances efficiency. In short, what this clause is saying, you can only become president.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Point of order. Chairman, point of order.
Order, Honorable.
Point of order.
Order, Honorable Dhliwayo.
Time up. Thank you. My point of order, Madam Speaker. They could. Honorable.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Makumire. Itai order, did it? Itai order. Itai order, Honorable Makumire. Amusana adikika vanoramba vachitsurwa each and every time. Ini ndine time panapa. Ndikubata time panapa. Saka mundiudzire nguva. Ndini ndavaudza kuti 4 minutes. Saka time ndakabata panapa. Itai order, Honorable Makumire.
Order, Honorable Makumire, order.
Matiziri pepe.
Wrap up, Honorable.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In fact, the
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
the indirect vote is a masterstroke
Point of order, Madam
that
Speaker.
insulates majority
Point
political
of order,
parties.
Madam
Point of order yako ndeye honorable Dhliwayo havasati vataura anything.
No. Point of order, Madam Speaker, ndeyekuti.
Ndaita ruling pana honorable Makumire saka point of order yako ndeye.
My point of order, ndeyekuti, can you clarify to us as members? We were once told that you are not the one who holds the watch. Now you are saying you are the one who is timekeeping.
Maita basa honorable chigare pasi. Maita basa chigare pasi. Maita basa. Honorable Dhliwayo, pedzisai tiende pane next person.
Point of privilege.
Thank you, Madam.
Point of privilege. Madam Speaker, you cannot automatically adjust or increase time for the debater without the consent of the House. We must give you consent. You can't just make a ruling to say I have given you extra time without our consent.
Order, honorable Makumire.
We are a house of rules and orders.
Order, honorable Makumire.
You must be governed by this green book.
Order, honorable Makumire. Honorable Makumire, ndine time panapo. Saka ndavauza kuti 4 minutes left. Ndine time
You
panapo.
must be guided
Kana
by the
mukauya
green book.
mukacheka pano, ndine time yandiri kutonyora
You
pasi.
must be guided by this. Hamugoni kuwedzera mununguva.
Chigarai pasi, honorable Makumire. Tazvinzwa, garai pasi, maita basa. Honorable, only 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm done. Thank you.